Jameson Blake was exactly 31 years old when he heard, from the other side of the cold consulting room table, that he would lose his vision. The doctor spoke with that measured voice, trained to deliver bad news, as he explained about a rare disease that had been silently progressing for years without him noticing. A typical retinitis pigmentosa with accelerated progression, said the specialist, adjusting his glasses. Unfortunately, in your case, the progression is much faster than we usually see. Jameson was an engineer at a multinational corporation and led a life carefully measured in numbers, goals, and results. Everything around him reflected a precise logic. The apartment in a quiet neighborhood, with a view of the neat greenery of the park, the car that seemed more like an extension of his desire for control. His relationships, like his projects, had an expiration date, generally short, ending when the surface ceased to surprise. "How long?" he asked, feeling his throat tighten. "Months, maybe a year until total loss. First, there will be blurs, then the peripheral vision will start narrowing, like a tunnel closing in, until—" Jameson didn't even listen to the rest. He left the doctor's office on autopilot, driving through the city streets that would soon become a mystery to him. He parked at the hill's viewpoint and stayed there, watching the sunset as if it were the first time, or the last. The news could not have come at a worse time. He had just lost his mother, Elise, after a long battle with cancer. An only child, without a father present since childhood, Jameson found himself completely alone. The few relatives he had lived in another city, maintaining only that superficial contact during holidays and birthdays. In the following days, he gathered the courage to tell his friends. The reactions were as expected: initial shock, words of comfort, and promises of support. But life continued its relentless course. Gradually, he realized how his limitations began to burden the relationships. When he declined the annual trip to the beach with his friends, claiming he could no longer drive there, he felt the first distancing. "We'll pick you up, man. Don't worry," said Marcus, his college friend. But Jameson knew he would be a burden. How would he participate in the sand volleyball games? How would he recognize people in the beer circle at night? Friday parties, which once were his refuge, had turned into confusing mazes. One night, after knocking back 3 drinks and failing to find the bathroom on his own, he decided it was time to retreat. The Jameson everyone knew, the successful, confident one, who always had a story to tell, was disappearing along with his vision. It was when everything was becoming darker that an unexpected light emerged, a text message that his phone's adapted reading system reproduced with that robotic voice. "Jameson, I heard about what's happening. I'm in town and would like to see you. Joanne. Joanne Monroe." The name brought back childhood memories that had been dormant. The quiet girl from next door, with whom he shared summer afternoons under the backyard mango tree. The shy teenager who helped everyone with math but was rarely invited to parties because she was considered by everyone an unattractive young girl. The young woman who left to study elsewhere while he followed the obvious path to engineering. "Joanne!" he murmured to himself, trying to form a mental image that was already beginning to fade. He vaguely remembered hair always tied back, simple clothes, a discreet presence that easily vanished in class photographs. The girl in the corners, as she defined herself with a self-deprecating laugh. When the doorbell rang the following Sunday, Jameson already needed to lean against the walls to move around his own apartment. He opened the door and saw only the outline of a figure against the brightness of the hallway. "Hi, James," said a soft and melodious voice that did not match his memories. "Can I come in?" Joanne did not come with grand promises, nor with the disguised pity that he had already detected in everyone's voice. She came with a thermos of coffee, with friendly conversation, genuinely wanting to know exactly what happened, something nobody had truly asked. Those afternoons stretched into days, which extended into weeks, months. Whenever Jameson called her with a message, whether to talk or to relive a lost habit, like listening to book readings, Joanne appeared, punctual as always. He then discovered that she had become a literary translator, None of that mechanical voice from the e-books he was now forced to use. There was life in her words, a rhythm that only someone who truly loved books could reproduce. As the owner of her own time and her own business, she adjusted her schedule without hesitation. And deep down, she even enjoyed those meetings, perhaps more than she should have. As Jameson's vision worsened, his other senses became sharper. He began to recognize the sound of her footsteps in the hallway, light but determined. He distinguished the discreet jasmine scent she wore, different from the intense aromas his ex-girlfriends preferred. He learned to identify the nuances of her voice, how it became more high-pitched when she was excited about some passage in the book, or how it dropped almost to a whisper when she shared something personal. One afternoon during an appointment she insisted on accompanying him to, Jameson asked why she was doing all that. "Because you would do the same for me," she replied, her voice soft but firm. She still remembered the school days when classmates teased her or men bothered her at parties. Who always showed up to defend her? James, the one who, at the time, was not afraid of anything, not the size of others nor the consequences. "I'm not so sure," he admitted, staring into the emptiness ahead of him as if it were a mirror. "I've never been very present in other people's lives." It was the first time he had said that out loud. In recent years, he had become a spectre even to himself. The silence that followed was broken by a phrase that would echo in his mind for a long time. "James, sometimes we need to lose something important to understand what has always been there." Blindness came completely on an autumn morning, almost a year and a half after the doctor's diagnosis. Jameson woke up, and when he opened his eyes, nothing changed. The darkness remained. He called Joanne, who arrived in 20 minutes. She sat next to him on the bed and held his hand while he cried for the first time since the diagnosis. "How will I live like this?" he asked between sobs. "One day at a time," she replied, "and not alone." Joanne became his eyes in the world. She described everything with a poetic precision that made Jameson smile. "The sky today is that impossible blue, you know? The kind that looks hand-painted." Or, "The tree in the square is all in bloom. It looks like it exploded in pink overnight." He learned to move with the cane, to identify environments by smells and sounds, to organize his house in a way that he could find everything by touch. Joanne helped him, but she never did for him what she knew he could do on his own. It was in the small daily achievements that their relationship transformed. Joanne was also enjoying being by his side. They lived through very calm moments and also moments of difficulty, which brought great intimacy between the two. She celebrated each small victory of James as if he had accomplished an extraordinary feat. When he stumbled and fell in the living room, she helped him up without making a fuss, respecting his pride. One night, after listening together to a concert in the city park, Jameson touched her face for the first time, mapping out every detail with his fingertips. He felt the smooth line of her jaw, the pronounced cheekbones, the nose that seemed to have a small irregularity. "I broke it when I was 8, she explained when his fingers hesitated. "I fell off my bike trying to do a trick to impress you. You didn't even notice. You were busy with your friends." Jameson smiled, embarrassed. "I'm sorry for not paying attention." "You are paying attention now," she said, and he felt her smile under his touch. That night, they kissed for the first time. A hesitant kiss, like teenagers discovering love, but filled with a feeling that Jameson had never experienced before. It was not the overwhelming and empty passion he knew, but something deeper, rooted in every word exchanged, in every moment shared in the darkness. The proposal came 6 months later, during a dinner he arranged at her favorite restaurant. Joanne cried when he, on his knees, offered a simple yet elegant ring he had chosen with the help of the jewelry store saleswoman. "How do you know I'm the right person?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "Because I don't need to see you completely," he replied. They got married in a small ceremony in the garden of the house they bought together. During the vows, Jameson touched Joanne's face and whispered that he didn't need to see her to know she was beautiful. Not the fleeting beauty of magazines, but the enduring beauty that comes from within, the kind that reveals itself in daily actions, in gestures of care, patience and strength. Life followed its course. Jameson began working as a consultant, using his expertise in engineering to solve complex problems, now with a unique perspective. Joanne expanded her business and hired an assistant, which allowed her to work while always staying close. They built a comfortable routine, full of music, reading aloud, and long conversations. 5 years after the wedding, during a routine checkup, the doctor mentioned a possibility that seemed almost unbelievable. "There is an experimental surgery," he explained cautiously. "The initial results have been promising in cases like yours. I can't guarantee success, but—" The doctor's words were still in the air when James felt his heart race. A strange warmth coursed through his body, as if a window had opened inside him. He couldn't contain his smile. He got up from the chair, grabbed his phone with trembling hands, and before even leaving the room called Joanne. "Love," he said, almost breathless. "The doctor said that maybe I might be able to see again." On the other end of the line, silence for a second. Then her voice came, choked with emotion. "Are you serious, James?" "I'm in. It's a new surgery. Experimental. But there's a chance. There's really a chance." Joanne began to cry. But it wasn't a cry of fear. It was the cry of someone seeing the impossible bend before hope. "We're going to do this together," she said. "Until the end." Jameson started to get very nervous and ended up having some anxiety attacks, but Joanne stayed by his side. He wasn't afraid of the surgery. On the contrary, he was excited. The idea of being able to see again made him feel restless in a good way, like a child on Christmas Eve. He counted the days and daydreamed, and amidst all that, he thought of her. "I can't wait to see you for real," he said one night with a smile she could feel just by his voice. Joanne hesitated before replying. It took her a little longer than usual. And if you don't like what you see?" she whispered. "You know me with your hands, with your ears, with your heart. But the eyes can be cruel." Jameson turned towards her and reached for her hands. "I love every part of you," he said firmly, "every feature, every curve, every silence. I know you completely. Your laughter, your scent after a bath. Nothing I see will change how I feel, nothing." She rested her forehead against his, trying to hold back the tears. "Promise?" "I promise," he replied, with the certainty of someone who could already see much more than the eyes could perceive. The surgery was scheduled for the spring. Joanne was by his side at every stage, holding his hand during the exams, laughing at the hospital's bureaucracies, and whispering in his ear that he was about to see the garden they had planted together bloom. In the hospital, after hours in the operating room, the decisive moment arrived. The doctor slowly removed the bandages from Jameson's eyes. The light blinded him momentarily, as a final warning. The visible world could be unforgiving. As the haze began to clear, the first image that formed was Joanne, sitting at the edge of the bed, hands clasped, a tense smile of anticipation, and many tears streaming down her face. She was not as he imagined. She was infinitely better. Her eyes were small and almond-shaped, a deep brown that reflected all life within them. Her mouth was slightly asymmetrical, her nose, her hair, which she now wore loose, framed her face with brown waves sprinkled with early grey strands. None of that fit the standards he once idolized, and that's when the tears came, not from disappointment, but from deep and overwhelming gratitude. Not only for being able to see again, but also for being able to see that woman he loved so much. He cried for the time he lived bound to an ideal that prevented him from truly seeing her. He cried because, all those years together when they were just friends, he ignored everything that was most precious in her. He cried for realizing that only the darkness had forced him to see what had always been there. Blindness taught him to see. The loss forced him to reassess all the truths he once considered absolute. Now, with his eyes open, He promised never to close his heart to what really mattered. That night, instead of talking about the regained light, he held her hand and whispered, "Thank you for staying, even when I was still blind inside." Joanne smiled, and that smile lit up the entire room. In the simplicity of that moment, Jameson finally understood that some faces can only be deciphered by the heart, and that true beauty is revealed only to those who learn to look beyond the eyes. The recovery was slow but full of small joys. The first time he saw the orange sky at sunset again, the first flower in the garden they planted together, Joanne's face, the way he always imagined after years without seeing her, and even more beautiful, because now he could see the sparkle in her eyes. After the hospital, life didn't return to how it was before. It was better. During his blindness, Jameson learned to slow down. Now that he could see again, he didn't want to go back to being the man who lived only for work and success. He wanted to be a present man. In the house where they lived on Sundays, they would make pancakes together, with flour scattered across the counter and laughter echoing through the kitchen. They had 2 children, Emma and Noah. James watched each birth with tears in his eyes, feeling grateful for being able to see their little faces the instant they came into the world. Sometimes he would spend hours watching his children sleep, as if he wanted to memorize every feature, every sigh. But above all, he never stopped looking at Joanne the same way he saw her before, with reverence, with tenderness, with a whole heart. The difficulties came, of course, as they come to everyone. But what they had built was solid. It was love in practice, in the small actions, in the shared silences. It was knowing that even in the dark, they had found each other, and that with or without light, they would continue to hold hands. And so they lived, intensely, but with gentleness, without hurry, but with purpose. Because now, more than ever, Jameson knew, seeing is much more than opening your eyes. It's knowing where to rest them, and with whom to close them at the end of the day. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.